Hey everyone, welcome to the Way of Champions podcast this week. This is John, and I am here with Jerry this week, and also our great friend and one of our lead certified trainers, Matt Booth, to talk about some of the work that we've been doing with teams and with schools. We've had a lot of requests lately, just about what is the Way of Champions exactly, and what do you do, and how do I become a part of that? And if you are a longtime listener of this podcast, you know that over the last 8 years, Jerry and I did a series of conferences, whether they were online during COVID or seven in-person conferences, just basically starting to teach some of this material. And what we decided to do in 2025 was in June, we got together with a cohort of 30 coaches from around the world. They ranged from youth coaches to college head coaches, from collegiate athletic directors at very well-known institutions to high school ADs, sports psychologists, strength and conditioning coaches, golf coaches, swimming, everything in between. And we had this incredible cohort in Lake George, Colorado. We were absolutely blown away by everything we were able to cover in a couple days and nights in the beautiful Colorado Rockies. And we just have now decided we wanted to talk a little bit about that program, but also for those who have gotten our books or followed this podcast or read our blogs or whatever it is. How do you start implementing this? And that's why this week Jerry and I have brought in Matt Booth. Matt is the Dean of Athletics and also the Director of Strength and Conditioning at Canterbury School in Fort Myers, Florida. And Matt has been on this personal growth journey that he'll tell you about, first individually and then immersing some teams in this material. And Matt was, one of the main inspirations for Jerry and I to say, wow, what if we really poured all the tools into people so that they could take this back to their schools and they could take this back to maybe it's just their team or their school or their community and teach some of this. And so I know Jerry and I are so excited to share Matt with all of you so you can learn from him and some of the things that he did to really transform a culture on and off the field at Canterbury that now continues to spread to his community so that you can do that as well. Now, before bring Jerry and Matt in, just want to say thank you to all of our supporters, all the people who subscribe to this podcast, who share it with their friends, and hopefully this one, after we're done, you'll share it and say, oh man, that's what we've been talking about. That's what we want to do in our school. So this is very shareable stuff here. Also, if you enjoy what you hear today, in the show notes, there is a link just to sign up, a little quick Google form. And you'll be the first to know when we open our next cohort of the Way of Champions retreat in 2026, because it's going to be in June of 2026. It's going to be absolutely incredible. And it's going to be limited. And the last one sold out in a day and a half. And I'm pretty sure this one's going to sell out even quicker. So if you get your name on that email list down in the show notes, you're going to be the first to know before we announce it to the public and fill it up quickly. Okay. Thanks to Sprocket Sports. Thanks to all of our Patreon podcast champions who support the podcast here and those who buy our books and keep sharing this message. All right. But now let's get down to the nitty gritty of the Way of Champions. And Jerry, as the guy who started it all, you get to go first. Why do you think we're here today?
Because we love what we do, and it's so life changing. And I don't use this is just coming right from my heart right now. I have no script in front of me, but I learned a long time ago that the message that Way of Champions is delivering is a powerful one. And not only that, not only do people want it, but they crave it. They might not know it yet, and part of our message today is to help educate people to see that indeed, how can we not want that? And so I started a long time ago before I met John, and then finally got to meet Matt. But when I started out, I was all alone, and it wasn't easy. But once I got that message out, I started seeing, oh my God, I'm going to need help here. And I did. I was overworked with the number of people and overwhelmed with the amount of the body of work. And I just kept writing books, and the more books I would write, I just finished number 20 just this past week. In those 20 books are the result of learning all along the journey what Way of Champions is all about. I was very fortunate and very lucky to get this work going because the very first team I ever worked with, I'll never forget it. The coach said, "Could you come in and help our team?" And I said, "Sure." In the back of my mind, I had no clue what I was going to do. I didn't know where to go, what to do. So I started reading and researching, and this is before the internet and everything else. And I walked in there and I started working with them, and they loved everything I did. Well, lo and behold, the very first year, they won a national championship and they blamed me for it. I took some of the credit, but within the next 9 years, we won another five national championships. Then I got a call from another coach at the University of Maryland, Cindy Timshall, and she called me and she said, "Would you come work with our team? I read your book, Thinking Body, Dancing Mind, and I love it. If you can bring that message to us, we'd really appreciate it." I went there. The very first 7 years I was with them, we won national championships. I'm getting goosebumps in my arm because this is real. I mean, I really feel it. I'm feeling what I'm saying. And then it went on and on. When Steve Kerr came to the West Coast to work with the Warriors, he got in touch with me because he had read a lot of my books as a player, and he read a lot of my books when he was with Chicago Bulls and with San Antonio, and so we stayed in touch. And when he got to California, he asked me if I would consult with him the very first year. Well, oh my God, I could have told him very first year he won a world championship using Way of Champions model. So, with all due humility, and believe me, I am in awe of this, not of me, but in the reaction that people are having to this concept of Way of Champions. I learned in a very short period of time that there are certain essential ingredients that go into the making of a champion. And I'm saying you don't become a champion, you are a champion. And the way you are a champion is you take these ingredients and use them on a day-to-day basis. And what happens is I notice everyone starts improving. You start getting better and better in everything you're doing. And then it just starts to balloon after a while. Well, so I wrote my first book on champions, which was called Way of the Champion. And that took off. And before you know it, everyone wanted a piece of what this championship culture, this championship attitude, this championship belief system is all about. So when I got overwhelmed with all of it, I reached out to John O'Sullivan. I reached out to a lot of people, actually. They just weren't a good fit. They had the wrong intention. They wanted to make money, not a difference. Way of Champions is not about making money. We're about making a difference in the lives of everyone that comes in contact with us. And so we talked together, John and I, and one thing led to another, and we put on our first conference, and that forever changed my life because I decided, you know what? It's not about me working with all these teams. It's about helping other people to take the message to other teams so that I can train them and we can go and deliver this message all over the world. We have people in Oman, we have people in Saudi Arabia, we have people in I don't know how many countries on 6 continents that are using Way of Champions. My books are in 14, 15 languages. So with all this as a background, uh, we have to slow it down a little bit and realize, like, well, what can we do now? And so John and I talked about it and we came up with the idea, why don't we have a deep dive conference, a program where what we can do is we can educate others, train them to be trainers, as Matt is right now and as John is right now. They proved to me that we could train other people. I mean, to have a Matt and John on your team doing this kind of work and doing it successfully, it's like, how can you not think that other people can do this too? So what we did was we opened up this conference called a Way of Champions certification licensing program, and we licensed and certified 30 people, handpicked, selected by us to go out and do this work. And actually it comes down to being a long program where we start 6 months earlier and we bleed into your life certain questions that you need to answer to get on board. And then after the conference, we have like a 4 or 5 or 6 month follow-up every month to continue the great work that everyone's doing. So it's pretty well involved, and John and I put it together, and we brought Matt on board, and Matt's done an amazing job with us. And so I think I'll stop there because otherwise I'll take the whole hour.
Thank you, Jerry. I think it's a very important history for people to understand, and we shared with that cohort there, and we share oftentimes in this podcast. The sometimes, as you say, you jump off the cliff and you grow your wings on the way down. You figure it out as you go. You get some tools and some ideas, but it's really sort of more of a way of being. Matt, I want to just bring you in to say hi to everyone, and I probably didn't do you justice in my introduction because prior to Canterbury, I mean, you worked at a super high level in, track and field and everything. So maybe tell people your story to Canterbury so they understand a little bit more about you and what you're doing in this school and why it's so special.
Well, how awesome is this guy sitting down with you? And I mean, just a little bit about me. Like John, you were saying, I've been blessed. I've been fortunate to work with some amazing athletes over the years. So prior to Canterbury, I was doing some work with Paul Doyle in the American Track League, and what Paul was trying to do was bring more professional meets to the American side. So I had the chance to be around Ashton Eaton, Asafa Powell, Lowell Jones, Sonia Richard Ross, all these amazing athletes. And what's really cool is got like going from that setting and then being able to go to our high school setting and show our kids like there's a gap between a high school athlete and a professional athlete. But what I was able to show our kids was that gap isn't that far, right? And that was like the greatest thing I was able to do as a coach was to give our kids some hope, to inspire our kids that there is a gap between that professional level and the high school level, but they got to see these athletes. They got to train with some of these NFL athletes I was fortunate enough to work with. They got to be alongside these athletes. And every single day these kids would show up and they would just show up in that weight room and just really go to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing thing when so many kids, so many parents say, I want this, but they don't understand what that is, right?
Yeah.
Or they don't
Yeah.
understand, like all those incredible athletes you mentioned are extremely athletically gifted,
Yeah.
right? They're so athletically gifted. They got great genes and then they took those genes and they maximized them and they trained and they did all that. But what sometimes gets lost is where's the mentality piece
Yeah.
and where is what happens off the track to let you do your best on the track and all that. And so, showing the breadcrumbs between, hey, you're in high school and you say I want this, and here's someone who does it, and I know what those breadcrumbs look like, and
Yeah.
so I'll present you with a path, but you're the one who has to walk it because I can't do the reps for you. I can't lift the weights. I can't shut off my phone 2 hours before bed. I can't choose what you put in your mouth every morning. Those are your choices, and the more good ones you make, they add up, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So this thing about what you're talking about, John, it's, inspiring our kids. I think that's the biggest thing is, walking into that weight room. And I think this is, kind of segue about my background. Like, I think this is where I struggled as a coach was I put a label on myself. Right. And I share this story all the time. Jerry, I've shared this at the conference. I shared this in Denver. I put a label on myself where I was just a strength and conditioning coach. And we would have these great conversations just in the weight room. Like you said, John, we talked about the mental game and trying to get our kids to overcome adversity and all those things. But where I struggled as a coach was I put a label and said, I'm just supposed to do this in the weight room, right? I'm just supposed to be this strength and conditioning coach. Who am I to step outside of the weight room and talk to other people and talk in front of teachers and coaches and all this thing? I'm not supposed to do that. I'm just a strength and conditioning coach. So that is how I showed up in the Way of Champions. And I was sitting there, and y'all know my story, but I was sitting there and I was searching for something. I came across this Way of Champions virtual conference. And I'm gonna be honest, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I immediately signed up. I logged on, and Jerry Lynch says, everyone craves this. And I didn't know I craved what he was talking about. I didn't even know I craved it until I heard it. Right. And all of a sudden, our good friend Dave Dickerson was talking about nothing changes if nothing changes. That was my light bulb moment where it's like I had to look at myself. I was 42 years old at the time. And you talk about a why right there. My why completely changed when he said nothing changes if nothing changes, right? It's that taking that look in the mirror and say, what can I do? How can I change to be a better coach, to be a better husband, to be a better leader? Like for me, it catapulted me to this whole new being, right? And I just started firing off emails to Jerry right after that. And here I am on the Way of Champions as an assistant trainer with you guys. And it's just crazy thinking about that transition from just being that strength and conditioning coach, living in that weight room to now making a bigger impact on other people outside of the world of strength and conditioning.
It's awesome. Jerry, what do you remember about Matt like reaching out? Because I remember, you kind of were doing some stuff with him, just you two, and then you started telling me about this coach from Florida that you were working with, and he's a little bit different, and he's doing things differently, and he wants to take this and he wants to bring it to all the teams in his school, and he sees all the athletes as a strength coach. So like what a perfect person, right? Versus just being the volleyball coach. How are you going to connect with the basketball players? But if
Yeah.
you're the strength coach and during the season, everyone's cycling through your weight room. You get to know them all. Do you remember those first meetings,
Yeah. Oh,
Jerry, and
I
why
do. I
why
do.
Matt?
Oh, yeah. Why, Matt? For sure. Uh, like so many of our listeners out there, if you have a growth mindset and if you're a lifelong learner, you already have two of the most wonderful qualities of leadership. And when I first talked to Matt, I wasn't able to tell him this because I wasn't certain, but you had, Matt, that unquenchable thirst,
Yeah.
if I can put it that way, to learn. And I just picked that up right away. When someone has that, I jump in and I say, okay, I want to give you what I've learned because this is going to make it a better world. With a with Matt in my world, it's a better world. With Matt in the life of other people, with John in the lives of other people, it's a better world. Why? It's a better world because the message that we're teaching, which is based on connecting, based on caring, based on empowerment, based on fearlessness, selflessness, based on love. And I don't mean the kumbaya moment, standing around the fire with our hands held, but I do know that love is something much deeper than that, which is creating what we do is we help people. And this is what Matt's doing at his schools, create an environment that's safe for people to learn, to be open, to not be afraid, to be able to be a better version of themselves by seeing that there's a bigger picture than the game itself. Soccer's a game, basketball's a game, football's a game, but there's something bigger than that. And what we do is Way of Champions teaches these values and these virtues and how not only teaches what they are, but how to implement them.
Mhm.
So back to your point, John, I saw this in Matt right away, and that's what attracted me to working with them. So I believe I have my timing wrong here, but I think after that first conference, didn't you invite me down there to talk to the whole group of coaches at Canterbury, Frank, the AD, and everyone else? Is that true?
Yeah, we immediately did a Zoom call with all of our coaches.
Yeah, and I remember that call. I remember it well. It only lasted an hour, but I felt like I came away from that thinking, OMG, like this is a place in Florida that really resonates with this message. So maybe I could work with one person, and that one person was Matt. And let's see if I can influence Matt so that he can go and influence others. Little did I know that I was creating a model that would lead to this certification process. So in many ways, it's your fault. Before that, I worked with John. John and I worked together, and John had his book, and he had his TED Talk, and he had all the wonderful things that John was doing to create life changes. His whole thing is changing the game, but he's changing the lives of people. That resonated with me. So when I reached out to John, I did a little training with John, and John went off on his own, and he took off and he started working with teams at universities and other places. And but for some reason, it was different with you because you were in the trench in the school. John was like me, an independent contractor.
Yeah.
But there you were, one of the crowd, and you just stood out to me, and you have ever since. And to this day, uh, you have taken the message of Way of Champions, which is a path of mental wellness,
Mhm.
mental health, bringing mental health to a program, to an environment. What could be better than that? We're all craving connection, right? I say to people, raise your hand if you don't want to feel relevant, if you don't want to feel important, valued, empowered, respected. All of you listeners right now, did your hands go up? No, I don't even see you. How did I know? Because I know this is what we crave. If that's true, this is what Way of Champions is all about. So I sat back and I just sort of smiled and nodded at you, and you would write to me like every freaking day. I mean, it just
Yeah.
seemed like forever. You never
Yeah.
stopped asking me questions. Who is this guy? But I had an open heart with it, and I realized that you're genuine, you're authentic, you're vulnerable, you're like a good coach. And I said, I can make a difference here with you. And so we went back and forth. And then before you know it, a year went by, a year and a half went by, and gangbusters, things were happening in southwestern Florida.
Yeah.
And so when we decide to put this conference on, why we're doing this conference again is, I mean, we can go out and make lots of money. There's no question about it. I make a good living, but it's not about making money. It's about making a difference. And this conference makes a difference because I, Jerry Lynch, don't have to go to Maryland to work with 45 athletes and then come home all the way from Maryland. What I do is we train coaches from all over the world that want to come to us, and they go back to their area. And what they do is they create environments that they can proliferate on their own without me being there. And so, what joy is that? And of course, with all our books, John has several books, I have several books, and people are reading the books, and so there's some follow up through the reading and what have you. It's pretty exciting, actually, and I'm in awe of it all, even though I'm responsible for a lot of it. Without you two guys, it wouldn't be happening for me, for sure. Yeah.
Matt, let me ask you a question because I want to make sure that those who are tuned in here like get some tools. So like this sounds great. What do I do first? Whatever.
Yeah.
And I know with you, right, it was like you started with yourself and getting yourself in this right place. But then you started small with just a couple teams, right? You didn't go to your school and say, everyone is changing everything today and you're all idiots and I got all the answers. Like you went and sought out some like-minded programs and coaches and probably I would think team captains who are like, okay, they're going to get this. Let me start small.
Yeah, so speaking on that, like you were saying, I was trying to be super strategic as far as picking the teams we did. So we chose our girls volleyball team, we worked with our boys soccer team, and we worked with our baseball team. And each team had a reason. So our girls volleyball team, super talented, right? And we always talk about, talents. If you got talent, it's not everything, right? You have to have the other stuff. That team never bonded together. They're always going at each other. I always share with people they're making TikTok videos about each other. All these things were going on with this team because they forgot about the connection piece, like Jerry was just talking about. And we always talk about, and we hear it on your podcast all the time. Like with our female teams, we have to bond first. We have to bond to go to battle, right? So we picked that team on purpose. Our men's soccer team, our coach Jared Russ, is all in on this. He's a firm believer in building connection and making sure we're being intentional in what we're doing and bringing people into our circle, standing side by side. So that was a pretty easy one. And then our baseball, our athletic director is also our head baseball coach. So why wouldn't we use that team if our athletic director is going to see some positive results from this? Like that's the perfect person to work with. And what's crazy is as we rolled this out, let's think about 3 years ago in Southwest Florida, all the stuff that we went through. So in Southwest Florida, just as we started to work with our women's volleyball team, and again, our number one priority was to bring this team together. And you guys with Way Champions, we always talk about the power of our circle. And we talk about this circle because in our circle, we literally stand side by side. No one is in front, no one's in back. And our girls bought into this concept so much. They had this new mantra to just protect our circle. And what was crazy, 3 years ago, our community got absolutely devastated by Hurricane Ian. We had three of our players had to get helicoptered lifted out. All these things were going on, and guess where their safe place was? Was coming back to our campus and being in our circle. And what was crazy with that team, because we just focused on the connection, we didn't even worry about tactics, scoreboard, any of that stuff. That team was able to go through that adversity and still win the district championship for the first time in 13 years.
Yeah.
So imagine that our other teams on our campus seeing this going on, like, what is happening with this girls volleyball team? Because they knew what the narrative was before. They're able to overcome this huge adversity, lean on their love and support for each other, and win the first district championship in 13 years. And Jerry, I see you. Go ahead, jump in here.
Well, God, I'm so excited. I'm pumped up again. Here's the deal. What people need to know, though, Matt, is I remember a picture of the
Yeah,
community standing in the gymnasium,
yeah,
a huge gymnasium in a circle
yeah,
during all of this devastation. And it was Way of Champions that you were teaching them the whole mission, the whole purpose of Way of Champions to use it in their lives to
yes,
overcome adversity. We're not
yes,
talking about losing a national championship. We're talking about losing lives. We're talking
yes,
about losing communities, losing houses, losing homes that stood for years. And this community comes together and you lead this group, Way of Champions. This is the way of the champion.
yep,
Come together,
yep,
connect, care for each other. Then we rise. And you rose, that community rose from that message that you delivered, which came from the studying and the work that you were doing with Way of Champions. I just had to throw that in there because this is, coming to our conference doesn't mean you go back and you have a championship team.
right,
It means you go back and you create a championship environment. You create a place where people can thrive. You create an environment where people feel safe enough to share their deepest feelings. And what, not only that, but where they can dig down deep and find out who they are so they can be the best version of themselves. And that's what it's about. And I love your story because it's emblematic of everything we're teaching in life.
yes,
And all of the work that I do personally, I've always said that I'm using sport as a vehicle. I love sport. I'll always love sport. At least I think I will. And at that point, I made the comment that it really is about life. And you're totally demonstrating that. John, you wanted to jump in here.
No, I mean, I remember it's funny 'cause until you mentioned it, I hadn't remembered that picture of everyone standing in the gym in the giant circle, but now I do, and just this like when a community faces devastation like that, they look for something to rally around, right? And a school community that could rally around again, multiple people who lost their homes, lost their houses, lost their jobs, and hey, we're going to rally around this and come together. And what I think is unique and fantastic about your school, and this is important, I think, for implementation as well, is you started with people who you knew would get on board,
yep,
right? And you had an athletic director who very quickly was like, "Yes,
Yeah,
this is it. I want
yep,
this to be my legacy
yeah,
for this school that we're going to do things differently." And then that gives you the freedom and the backing to teach it, but also to know that when someone's sitting there with their arms crossed, going, "This is stupid. I'm not doing this." Their boss is like, "Oh, yes, you are," or
yeah, yeah,
there's other places you can work, but it won't be here because this matters. Because it's really hard. So many people
yeah,
come to us like you, Matt, but then they feel like they're on an island. Like, I'm the only
yep,
one who
yep,
believes this. And it's like, well, then do it in your little kingdom, do it on your island, do it with your team, and just see if anyone notices. Because usually people do, and they come and knock and be like, all right, what are you doing here? But I'm also consistently amazed working at university, and Jerry, you have as well, right? Where, you're working at like Maryland and win 7 national titles in a row. Why isn't every other coach in that office going, "What are you doing? How can we do this as well?" Have worked at schools where most coaches don't come into the ones who are being the most successful year after year and say, "What are you doing that I'm not?"
Right.
And when
Yeah.
they do, and then they jump on board and they're like, "Yes, this is exactly what we want."
Mhm. Yeah, that was the experience I had at Maryland. And as soon as Cindy had all that, after the first 2 years, it's like, what's in your Kool-Aid? And it was like, okay, so I have Jerry, I have Gary Gate, you don't, and
Mhm.
can I talk to him? So gradually, I wound up getting 4 or 5 teams at Maryland. There were a bunch of coaches that didn't want any part of it. That's
Yeah.
fine. This is,
Yeah.
and the listeners here, maybe you don't want part of this either. But again, I know deep down all those coaches that said no to what I was doing were not saying no to me. They were saying no to they weren't ready to get what they craved. That's the important issue here. The issue is like be honest with yourself. If you don't care about being cared for or don't feel like you being important is important or being valued is valued, if you don't feel that, that's okay. Maybe you're just not ready for it, or maybe you never will be. Who cares? It's not important to me. What's
Yeah.
important is that you find what's going to be good for you so that you can run your program the way you'd like to.
Matt, what did you do like next? I think the next year you said, okay, now we're going out and every team's going to be doing this. And then, like I said before, I think you were the
Yeah.
perfect guy because, hey, I'm the director of strength and conditioning. Everyone's coming to my weight room. So, especially those team captains and those team leaders, I get to influence them. I get to do like a book read club. I get to
Yeah.
do things. That they can then bring back to their teams and I can empower them a bit too. So what was the next steps like?
So for us, like you were saying, the next step for us was introducing this to all the teams. So again, we worked with those 3 teams and everyone saw the evidence. So, girls win the championship. Our boys soccer team were the state runner-ups that year, and baseball went 25-5. And so we were super strategic as far as looking at our schedule on our campus. And again, at our school, since we had complete buy-in, like we worked around our schedule. We built in a lunch and a B lunch, and I was able to meet with all our teams, and we just did quick 20-minute lessons. So think about high school athletes now. Attention span's not that long. So we had 20-minute intentional things all about culture, about leadership, about mental performance, all the teachings of Way of Champions. Our coaches would come to the meeting. They would get to hear the kids, and the kids, like Jerry, you always say it, our kids crave this, the conversations we had. So what we did is we built intentional space on our campus to have these conversations. And a lot of times we get pushback from coaches like, "Oh, this is going to take away from practice time." But what we did, we built it into the school day. We didn't take away from practice time, but then the kids went to practice and took all the lessons from the meeting and were able to apply it in their practice setting. So then that leads to performance. And next thing you know, we get this whole domino effect where the whole culture has changed on our campus. But again, it was starting small and being intentional how we went about this. And now it's just simply, when you say culture, that's the way we do things here now.
And the practice time excuse is one that I hear all the time,
All
and
the
Jerry
time.
hears all the time. And I'm just like, first of all, I mean, I used to do, license mentorship for U.S. Soccer, and the first thing I would do every time I worked with a coach is I would put a stopwatch on anytime the ball wasn't rolling, right? So when they were talking, when they were sending people to get drinks, when they were lecturing, when they were whatever they were doing, and I would always ask them, okay, 90-minute practice, how many minutes do you think the ball wasn't rolling? And they'd always almost to the T, they'll go, 15 minutes. Like, no, it's 45, right? So most half your practice, the ball's not rolling anyway. So find some time within that. And then number two, wouldn't you like your team to show up more focused, more prepared, more ready to compete? Wouldn't you rather have a few minutes less of quality practice than more time of average practice? And everyone's like, well, yeah, of course. Great. That's what this does, right? When we talk about values, when we talk about how we treat our teammates, when we talk about how we compete and how we lead and how we inspire and how we have standards and not rules, that makes practice better. So you actually need less practice time
Yeah.
to get across the same amount of stuff. And so, yeah, I never buy that excuse.
Yeah. And then one thing that we did struggle with, I mean, we had a couple teams, couple outliers, and I shared this one. Remember this one in Denver where our boys lacrosse team was pushing back, pushing back, pushing back. And then just this year, they're like, okay, we're all in. Let's go through this. So again, we started implementing, we started rolling out Way of Champions. And what does that team do? They go undefeated. They went 21 and 0. And again, it's not about wins and losses, but I mean, a fact's a fact. They went 21 and 0. It was our first ever undefeated team on our campus. But again, that it took a process. It took 2 years for them to finally be like, okay, we're in. What are you all doing? Let's do this. 21 and 0 went all the way to the regional finals. And now we're just building off of that. Now they're starting to create their own sustainable culture.
Yeah. And
So
good,
go
Jay.
ahead, John. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and it's so funny, like take lacrosse for an example, where, right, and you were using the Champion Teammate book as sort
Yeah.
of the textbook for this, right? But meanwhile, 3 years ago and 2 years ago, Notre Dame men's lacrosse was using it to win back-to-back national championships, right? And Syracuse men's lacrosse this year, and UNC women's lacrosse, and Colby, and all these programs.
Yeah.
Middlebury
Yeah.
girls have won four in a row, and whatever. And it's like, all these really successful programs are using the book that you're saying, no, this is stupid, it won't work for us. And so
Yeah.
it's always a funny thing. And I mean, Jerry, we just got, I won't mention his name because we didn't ask permission, but a rowing coach from Australia who just used it with their national team right before the World Championships under 23, and he sent us a picture of them all with the book and everything. And he said, handed these men this book, and they all go to Ivy League schools and all this sort of stuff, and they're big hugging, and I was worried like they would think this was silly, and they loved it. They love to bond, they love to connect, they love to really dive into what's going to make us great. And
They
so
craved it. They didn't know
crazy.
it till they saw the book. And it's not about selling the book, it's about selling the idea, giving people something that they really want, what
Yeah.
they really deeply desire, which in this day and age when the world, okay, so I can define the world in many ways, but the words that come up for me is, we live in a volatile world. It's very uncertain. It's very complex. It's very ambiguous. There's a lot of fear in the world. But when you're reading about how people can learn how to connect and care about each other, what a message. And to empower each other, again, raise your hand if you don't want to feel empowered. I'll tell you, I believe in you. You can do this. That means a lot to you. So, yeah, Gary Gay takes his team. 13 years they hadn't been to the Final Four, reads the book, 65 copies he buys. Everyone reads it. They have discussions every week. They get to a Final Four for the first time in 13 years. The stories like that go on and on. But what I'd like to do, fellas, is I'd like to just sort of shift gears a bit here because we've mentioned the word relationships. Matt, you mentioned it. John, you alluded to it. And I just want to say that a big part of this program is how to go back and develop relationships. And if you don't think relationships are important, well, first of all, let me say this. How many coaches do you know, or how many athletic directors do you know that are really, really good at developing relationships? It's hard to find. But when you go back to your team and you know how to develop relationships, you're going to see a difference. And that's what happens in this with this work. And so one of the things we focus on is training you to go out and be trainers, to train people to have good relationships, to have a good culture, to have a good inner game. The inner game starts with you. We're going to be creating a situation, helping you to create a situation where you really get to know who you are. And when you know who you are, then you can really love yourself. And when you love yourself, great things happen. And these are parts of the program that we're delivering. But I want to get back to that relationship piece because it's so important. A lot of people say, well, relationships, who cares, No, no, you've got to take the time to do that. It's worth the time. As John said, if you put 20 minutes a day into developing a relationship, or 15 minutes or 5 minutes, you'll save so much time at the end of the day in terms of the people listening to you and getting what you want out of your players. So it was recently, and by the way, Matt and John, a great example. I'm going to speak out of sync here, but John and Matt are two great examples of what happens when you absorb this stuff with Way of Champions. Just listen to them and understand that. But it doesn't stop here. I mean, every major program I've ever been with, Way of Champions has had over 130 world, national, and state conference and state champions. Imagine that. Most people in my profession, they hope they get one championship in their tenure, and so that's why Way of Champions, I think I've learned something from this. But one of the things I've learned is the importance of relationships. Let me get back there because I can get off into space there someplace and forget what I was saying. But the idea of a good relationship is so important. I went up to Steve Kerr. Oh, this is several years ago. Steve and I'm not just dropping a name here. He's a very personal friend and a good friend. He's read my books from the time he worked with with playing with the Bulls and what have you. And I said when he came here, he asked me to work with him. And during that time, I said to him, "So Steve, help me out here. What is the most important game that you won your very first year as a coach, winning the world championship? What was the very I expected, well, for sure the OKC game, we're down 3-1 in the playoffs, the NBA playoffs, down 3-1. You're not coming back from that, right? He didn't say that. And he didn't talk about the last game, about the Cleveland Cavaliers when they were down 2-1 and playing that next game in Cleveland against LeBron James. He didn't say that either. So I said, so tell me, what was the most important game? He said, that's easy, the relationship game. And there it was. To have his vote of confidence, to have his affirmation and his words that that was the most important game. Not that I didn't know that. I kind of baited him in a way. I knew that anyway. I felt it. I sensed it. But having him say that and then go on and have someone like a Phil Jackson tell me the same thing, or Quinn Snyder or Cindy Timshall or Tara Vanderveer, all these iconic Anson Dorrance to tell us the same thing, that the relationships are the most important part. If you're listening to this and you're doing nothing about that, nothing will change. You know, as Matt says, nothing changes if nothing changes. If you want to change that, you can change it. I've learned this later in life. I didn't know it at your age. I didn't know about relationships and how to win the relationship. Now I walk into a room, the first thing I want to do is I want to win the hearts of the players or the coaches or the athletic directors. Why? Because if I can win their heart, that means they open up their heart. Then I can step in. They give me permission to do my work. And the work that I'm giving them is the work that they want and they crave. And so hearing that from these kind of coaches, this level of coaches, why wouldn't people want to come to us and find out what that secret is or what that message is all about? And that's what this conference is that we've been doing this last year is we have 30 people coming to us saying, you know what, guys, help us. I want to develop my skill set with the relationship games and communication and listening and all these other wonderful.
Well, what's
Yeah, John.
interesting because I think, just pivot and tell the people listening about this a little bit because we're going to open up this new cohort soon, and yes, we'd love you all to be involved. And no, we realize not everyone is going to be able to be or whatever. It's not that type of program, but we really wanted to also create a community of people who felt like, okay, I believe this, I think this, and I have other people who I can rely on. And I think one of the coolest things we did, Jerry, you mentioned we put people on from when they signed up on a 6-month journaling journey of really looking into, well, who am I and why do I do this? And answering questions and then coming back to them a couple months later and seeing how it evolved. We set up, a little community chat group, and that chat group since the event, a lot of these things come together and they finish and then they fizzle out or whatever. But this chat group, every morning I open up WhatsApp and there's like 25 things in there. I'm like, oh my God. But people are sharing as they're going, and then they're learning and connecting with each other and calling someone and saying, well, who in this cohort is like me? They're a college head coach, or who in this cohort has experience doing coach development work? What can I, let me reach out for them. And so the generosity of and the collective wisdom of these 30 people has just been incredible for us as well to learn
Mhm.
from them, but also to see how they look at this material and how they look to implement it and take it to their teams. And we learned so much from them,
Yeah.
not just during the gathering, but after the gathering, you know?
Yeah. It doesn't die because the conference is over. Okay, thanks for coming. It's great meeting you, and it's all over. We're getting closer. I can feel it. You can see it. You can sense it. What John's saying is we have this WhatsApp set up, and every day, I mean, I'm overwhelmed with the input. I just can't believe that the participation and what level and how sophisticated it is and what I'm learning by reading their stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, just give them another 5 years, they're going to be way beyond where I'm at right now. But it's just happening that way, and it's lovely and so refreshing.
Yeah. Well,
And
Matt,
one
oh, go
one
ahead.
thing
Yeah.
one thing I love about that, guys, is talking about the WhatsApp. Think about all the stories our new cohort has and how many of them have stepped out of their comfort zone. And they all of us have now become more courageous. Some people are like, this is the first time I would never have done a feelingization. I would never do a visualization with any group. And then we had three people jump on the WhatsApp and like, because of the courage y'all gave me in just 4 days, right? Being together for 4 days, like just to watch all of us in that 4 days step out of our comfort zone. We saw people be vulnerable. We saw hugs. We saw tears, and together as a group, like the energy we create just on a phone dialogue is like through the roof, and everyone's now taking more risk.
Hmm. And
And
then we
that's a
all,
key word right there, that risk taking, because
Yeah.
otherwise, what we do is we envy all the dancers, or we envy all those who did take the risk,
Yeah.
were willing to go out on the dance floor and look silly. And as a coach, sometimes you have to step outside your comfort zone. And Way of Champions is built that way. So we even our logo that we wear proudly over our hearts, it says that, you take that chance, step outside the box, think in a different way. What's outside the box? Well, how about this? How about your opponent as your partner? You're going to learn from your opponent everything you need to know to be the best version of yourself. How about this one? You lose, but yet in that way you win. Oh my gosh. You mean yeah, you're a better team on Monday after that loss on Saturday. And these are the reasons why. And the next time you play that same game, you're going to be above it. And so what we do is we look at all these things that we accept as true, like losing sucks. Well, it doesn't feel good, yes, but it's a, it's volumes of learning. And that we put people in that position to understand that they indeed can control so much more than they thought they could.
yeah. The what was amazing, right? Like, because Jerry, you and I sat down for months and thought about, okay, how do we use these 4 days? And we also knew that, when people sign up for these things, because I've done it and we've all done it, you go there, you're like, okay, where's my list of tools, right? And I want all these tools. But we spent a lot of time on, to go back to this word, on being like that the most important tool that a coach ever possesses or leader is self-awareness, right? So we better take a deep dive into ourselves and start to understand, who am I, and why do I do this, and what's at the basis of all this, and what are the narratives that maybe I'm carrying in my life that are not helping me do this. Before I hand you tools, it's like handing you a drill without, a charger to a place to plug it in, right? Self-awareness is how you plug it in and you charge that tool. And so I think a lot of people came for the tools, and they left with this new realization and deep understanding of themselves. And they're like, this isn't just coaching, like this is my marriage. this is my relationship with my kids. And I think that was what you and I talked about all along. I'm like, that's what I want people to leave with,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We can hand them
yeah.
a book with tools, but you really need that deep connection and togetherness and to have that.
Well, you can't coach, you can't lead, you can't be a father or a mother, you can't be a pastor in a parish, you can't be an army commander, and be good at it unless you know yourself. And when I talk to these iconic coaches, all the ones that I've mentioned, we'll throw Coach K in there, and there are many, many. Bill Walsh, another one. They all agree that it all comes from knowing yourself, and to get the time to John, to get the time to know yourself through self-awareness. Once we identified that and we added that to our program, then it was so much deeper and so much richer because people came away feeling more confident. You can feel confident if you know yourself and you love yourself. It's people that don't feel confident. Yeah, they don't know themselves. They don't love themselves, or they don't love what they see. And so it's a self-examination process. And then you can walk in a room, and when you walk in that room, things shift. People can feel. They don't hear you, they feel you. They feel that energy, and you bring the energy that you want them to have, and you model that energy, and you model creation, you model caring, you model compassion, you model all these things. And that's what you're going to be trained to do. So we're not going to send you out in the world with a bookload of information. Hell, like I said, I wrote 20 books. You want all the information out of there, you could read it and take it. But if you could, I don't care who you are. If you don't know who you are, as John said, self-awareness, and you walk into that room, there's going to be no shift whatsoever,
Mhm.
and nothing's going to be elevated in that room. So
Yeah.
we
I
we
mean,
do we do a good job with that.
I mean, certainly this year, and I've shared on the podcast here, my dad recently passed away, but he passed away. I got the call on my way to the airport to go to this event. So I kind of took the vulnerability piece from 0 to 60 pretty quickly, because of all the emotions that I was experiencing with the
Yeah.
death of one of the most influential people in my life. And then, if you read, the blog I wrote about it, as I'm there trying to run this event with you guys and coordinating with my brother and sister and seeing everything that the fire department was doing for my dad and just the emotions of so many things, but that vulnerability piece, that willingness to just open up and be like, man, I'm not perfect and I'm going through some stuff here, but I know if I work on it, I can come out the other side better at all this. Like that was big, and that was my goal. Like you say, why did we do that conference? Because I wanted to do something different than any coaching conference that's ever been done
Oh my
anywhere.
gosh.
That was
Yeah.
my goal. Was
Yeah.
and whatever, Jerry, 9, 10 years ago when we did our first event in Boulder, and there was 50 people there. And the last day, we're sort of saying our goodbyes, and I'm looking around, and people are in tears, saying, "Man, this changed my life." And
Oh,
I just remember that going, "Wow, that's no one's experience at a sports coaching conference." But man, this we're onto something here, and then the ability to take it that much deeper in a much more intimate setting and beautiful, and just away from the world for 4 days. That was my goal. Was like take people on this personal development journey centered around sports, and we'll give them some tools, but the goal here, just like I think the goal is with the teams we work with, just want you to leave here being better people,
yeah. Yeah.
you know? So,
You'll never hear this from another, you never will. If you do, send them my way. I need to talk to this person. But I've never, in my experience, I've been to how many coaching conferences, developmental conferences, how many books have I read on leadership? How many books have I written on leadership? And I'll tell you, there's nothing like this conference. And I don't need to say another word about it. I know we're going to sell out this conference, but the point I want to make is that, you know, it's a feeling conference. You go to the others and you get dissemination of information. And that's good. And there'll always be a need for dissemination of information, but you won't get that connection. You won't get that caring piece. You won't get that sense of confidence self in who you are as a person. And this is what's brought out here. I'll tell you personally, I'm going to say something here is that I learned, I don't know, I'm not going to compare myself to anybody, but I probably learned as much or more than anyone that came to that conference. And I'm the teacher. I'm one of the teachers. And I say that because that's a big reason why I do this is there's 30 people average age, I don't know, what, 45, 50 times
Hmm.
that's 1500 years of experience. I'm going to learn a hell of a lot. But here's the other thing that you all need to know before you come to this conference. And Matt and John, you could speak for yourselves on this, but I use it. I use the conference for I want to what I want to do really is I want to master my craft. I've been at it a long time and I'm only halfway there. I want to be a better coach. I want to be a better presenter of wisdom. I want to be a better writer. I want to be a better friend. And so when I go here to these places, I take risks
Hmm.
and I encourage people to take risks. You know, I took 3 or 4 bigger risks than I've ever taken before in this conference, and it all turned out pretty well. And I'll continue to do this. So even for the presenters, we have this opportunity ourselves to take risks to be better coaches for you, better trainers for you. And there's very few people who are putting on conferences who are saying, you know what? I'm using you to be better, a better version of myself. And no matter what happens, I'm going to walk out of here feeling at a higher level than
Hmm.
when I walked in here.
Matt,
And that's the attitude we have.
Matt, I just, you presented there at the end and you talked about what you'd done at Canterbury and some of the tools and the way you've did it. But one of the things that you shared and a lot of people afterwards said they really appreciate that is, not every season ends with a trophy. Right? Like, and not everyone's going to win. And yes, we talk about those because we want, because there is this mythology that if you start talking about love and connection, well, you're soft and you don't win anything. So, when I first met Jerry, I believe philosophically in a lot of things, and I'm looking at teams winning national championships using this and saying, yes, see, I know this works. I know this is what people crave. I know this is what people want. Well, for you as well, right? You're working with all these teams. Now, you don't have 18 state champions or whatever, but like teams can still have one of their best seasons ever. And those athletes can still be like, man, you know what? I take what you taught me and I'm going to use it. So talk about the importance of that as well.
I mean, there's man, there's so many things that you can say, but I think the biggest thing that's resonated on our campus was really getting our school and getting our teams to let go of that whole concept of winning trophies, like you're just saying, John, and letting go of just the results. And Jerry, you're just talking about this as well. It's as a community, how do we come together and build each other up just to become better people? Right. And think about that. I mean, how many kids actually go on to play college sports? And we talk about this all the time on our campus. It's what, 3 to 6%? It's
Mm,
such a small percent that go on to play college sports. It's so much bigger than that. It's going beyond that. Like we came away with that conference and we come away coming onto campus this year. We really talked about playing bigger for each other. Right. And it's one of those things like you ask yourself, how have I played small? What have I done in my life to play small? How can we come together in this circle? And we talk a lot about, I share the story about the redwoods where we link arms. And if you talk about the redwood trees, like that's a great story I got from Sherry Cole, right? And the redwood root system. If you think about the root system for the redwoods, these huge majestic trees, right? They last over 2,000 years. You can barely see the tips of the tops there, but their root system, they don't go burying down deep. They don't anchor by themselves. What a redwood tree does is it reaches out only 6 to 12 feet and they hold each other up. That root system literally links up with the redwoods around it. And that's the image and that's the environment and that's the feeling that we wanted to create on our campus every day. It wasn't about a scoreboard. It wasn't about that. It was about what type of impact, what type of legacy are we leaving behind? How are we growing our roots? How are we rising together? Right? And then you walk on that campus. You walk on our campus and it just feels different. We have visitors all the time. They're like, man, there's something different about Canterbury because we took the time to build in the space, to be intentional, to be there for each other, to link up, to rise up, to understand this is bigger than just our time here. Right? This is about everyone that stepped on our campus before. This is about people who are going to step on our campus after. It's about the legacy we leave when the sun is shining on us. And I think that's the biggest thing we have learned going through the Way of Champions was it's the impact we have that goes beyond just sports.
Matt, just move to your right a little bit.
I'll go cheat a little bit here for you, Jerry.
Just a little bit. Ah, look at those trophies. Yeah, they won the trophies, but what I like to say, coattailing off of your brilliant statement just then, I love the way you presented that. What I know is this, and what people need to know about champions. Again, I'm going to say this, you don't become a champion. You either are a champion now or not. You don't become something. You have to act every day using the things that we're teaching, the items that we're teaching, building good relationships, caring, connection, good cultures, the inner game, self-awareness. When you put all that together, what happens is you're acting as if you're a champion.
Mhm.
What's going to happen? You that might, if you have all the talent in the world physically, you might win the championship overall, but you might not. And it's not all, like John said, it's not about putting medals around your neck. It's about how can we get the most out of you. So if you have the way of the champion, the way they live their life each day, what you're doing is you're positioning yourself not for the championship itself, but you're positioning yourself to be the best champion you can be at that given moment of time, given what you've been given physically.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And so those trophies, evidently, what you had with those trophies, you also had teams that had some really pretty good talents physically. But
Yeah.
when you put it together with the inner game, the way we're teaching it, you position yourself for those trophies. So, all the coaches I've worked with at the end of the season, yeah, we didn't win, but boy, we had one hell of a season. And I
Mhm.
love to hear that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once you do it, like you said, Matt, over the course of years and it just, you're a couple of years in, well, then it just starts you have to continue to be intentional about it and talk about it and set the standards, but then it just becomes this is how we do things here, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And when I just got back from working with, two teams at Rutgers University, one that I've been with 8 years, and it's just, I mean, I've seen so many classes come through in this year's senior leadership, and they've been there 4 years, and how they've grown and evolved, and trying to leave the shirt in a better place, and try to take the program forward, and just your issue at that, what's cool is the new players come in and I meet with all them and I'm like, so tell me about it, like what made you choose here, why here, and they say because this team is closer than any other team, because this team competes like super, like this is what I've been looking for in my
yeah,
sports experience, the way the coaches treat me, the way, and it's hard, right? It's
Mhm.
really hard. We're trying to win a national championship. We're trying to win a Big Ten championship, but we're doing that in an environment of love and respect. And if you can't love and respect and work hard and compete and accept your role and all that, it just might not be a good fit for you. But what we find is we get these transfers in who've gone someplace else and they're like, man, that was the antithesis of what we're doing here. Like this, I'm thriving, and the parents are like, man, this is
yeah,
we didn't think this was possible in college sports, and that's what I'm most proud of. We haven't won that national championship yet, but we've won a Big Ten. We've been close. We've been number one in the country, and but the fact that the kids are still so connected, and then going on, and while I was just there, one of them was representing Ireland in the European Championships. We're watching her on TV and whatever, and like that to me is what matters most.
Yeah.
I like the fact that we're all having an impact as well, and we don't say this enough, but we're having a big, huge impact on one of the most important topics right now in all sports, college especially, high school for sure, pros maybe a little bit, and that is the mental wellness piece and mental health and wellness. And John and I recently did a DVD called the with Championship Productions, and it was called Coaching the Quiet Crisis. There is a lot of things going on out there that people see that don't understand what it's all about and what they can do about it, and that is uh, you just lost one of your trophies.
I know.
I guess you didn't deserve it. What's going on, Frank?
Hi guys, I didn't want to interrupt. I promise I'm just trying to get ready.
Yeah, I know you want to steal trophies. That's how you get trophies. All right. Well,
It's not about the trophies.
Well, I have to say, for those who are just watching this on YouTube, you got to see Matt's boss come in and steal the trophy right behind him, which was fantastic. I love that. That's never happened before in
nope.
440 episodes. So that was good. But we were wrapping it up, and Jerry, you were just talking about just kind of bringing this all together for us, and
Yeah,
um,
I just think that what I was talking about before that was the whole idea of don't underestimate the power of Way of Champions to help you go back to your community and confront and look at and coach the quiet crisis, which is happening everywhere. Don't deny it. I'll tell you, no matter where you go, if there's a sports team or a sports program, there are some kids who are suffering. That's all. There are some kids who are feeling a lot of pain emotionally, spiritually, mentally. Now, that said, the kinds of environments that we're creating, the safe environment that Way of Champions looks at, creates an environment where people can feel like they belong. The reason why there's a lot of mental unwellness is because they don't feel like they belong. They don't feel important. They don't feel like they're listened to, that they're heard, or they're even seen. And again, the training that we do is to train you to go back to your program, your community, whatever your environment is, and make sure that those are addressed, not directly about the mental wellness as much as creating the environment so that we prevent these situations from happening. And we've had a lot of success with it, and our DVD goes into quite a lot of depth with it. But the training that we'll do in Colorado with you, every bit of it will help you to emanate an environment that represents mental wellness.
mm. Well, let's bring it home, Matt. I just last final thought from you as someone who has sort of lived this the last couple of years and brought it to a school and dealt with some pushback and but also is starting to see the results on and off the field. I mean, now even bringing it to your faculty.
Yeah.
Just last thoughts from you.
I think my last thought is we all can do this, right? I think that was my biggest takeaway when I first jumped onto that first virtual conference. It was something that I could easily just take from the conference and bring to my campus, right? So I think my biggest takeaway was all of us can have the courage to take this and you kind of make it your own, right? We don't have to do it John O'Sullivan way. I don't have to do it the way Jerry Lynch does it. What I did was I made it unique based on what my school needed at that time to build out a better culture, to work on the mental game, to make sure we're developing great leaders. And what the cooler thing was I was able to do that my own way, my own unique way. And now here we are 3 years later where our campus is thriving, the culture is thriving. It's just the way we do things here. And we're really all here for each other. So I think the biggest takeaway for me and what I want our listeners to understand is you can take this, you can make it your own. Be patient, but build it out the way that your school needs you, the way your student athletes need you, and you can create something amazing that's going to leave a lasting impact.
Mm, love it. Jerry, any final thought you want
Yeah.
to leave them with?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I'll just coattail off of what Matt just said. And not only that, you can make it your own, but all you have to do is be you, be who
Yeah.
you are. And part of this training is to help you find out who you are. And once you know that, that'll give you a lot of confidence and strength. And you do it in your way with your program, everything that you guys need, and it doesn't change. connection, caring, love, empowerment. It doesn't matter what environment you're in or where you are, it's all the same and people want it.
Mm, love it. Love it. Well, everyone, thank you for listening. Hopefully you got some ideas and tools and things that you can go and use and do a book study or whatever you like. But again, down in the show notes here, whatever platform you're on, if you're on Changing the Game Project website or whatever, there's just a little Google form link. This is sort of like the preliminary application. We won't actually open registration until late in the fall. But this is your preliminary to make sure you get all the communications. And then what we'll do is we'll do a little Zoom session and tell people about where we're staying and what we're doing, and tell people, answer all of your questions about this event as well. So make sure your email is on that so that we don't miss you, so you don't miss any announcements or anything. Because, like I said, last year we did the webinar, we opened it up and I hit done, and we were 2/3 full by the time the webinar was over. So it was pretty crazy, and then it was all gone the next day. So don't miss out. Put your name on there. There's no obligation or anything. It just make sure that you're the first to know. And obviously, if you have any questions or things like that, you just reach out, John at changingthegameproject.com, and we can answer those questions as well. So thank you for listening. Thank you to all our great supporters and everyone who shares this. Your influence is never neutral, and hopefully we can give you some more tools to be a little bit more influential, everyone. See you again next week, all.